Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
The next topic that we have for week 9 is related to finance and innovation. Here, we will be talking about the different sources to finance innovation, what are the challenges that are faced by the inventors and innovators in order to fund their new projects, and also the kind of institution that can be created in an economy to support the innovation activities. So what we have is an R&D process or the innovation, which is indeed very expensive in nature. That means you need to spend a lot of resources, including the physical and the human resource. It is also time consuming. That means the outcome of that is not very clear, maybe within a month or 2 months. Sometimes there might be a lag which is involved in investing in research and development and getting out the final outcome. And the outcome that we have is also uncertain, which is not known. So given these things that characterize the innovation process, the question arises, who will fund them? Who will finance them? What are the problems associated with that? So the problem from the economics point of view are related to asymmetric information. We will look at that, moral hazard, and also leading to the problem of market failure. We had a long discussion on it initially when we discussed about some of the basic concepts of economics that we are going to use in this particular course. Apart from that, if you look at the research and development expenditure, you will find that many a times it is something which is dominated by staff cost. What does it mean? It means that if you are dividing the total expenditure into current and capital, where capital would be related to the involvement or investments made into the new equipment, establishing the R&D center, buying some new machinery, then that is a part of your capital investment. Now, having made this kind of an investment once, you will realize that over a period of a time, companies may indeed engage with more and more scientists and researchers. As a result, the current expenditure will be the maximum part of this R&D expenditure. So it will be dominated by the staff cost. Next, we also know that the returns which we get from this R&D investment are also going to be highly skewed. That means you will not get an even returns from each and every project. You will find that some project will give you very high yield vis-a-vis some other project which may not give you much returns. So as a result, what will happen? The investment made in those so-called dud or not yielding research projects will actually become sunk cost. It will not be possible for you to recover it over a period of a time. So then when you look at the information asymmetry and how it will influence the market for R&D project, we can look at this particular example. So suppose we look at these two cases where you have a supply of a high quality R&D projects. On one side, we have a high quality R&D project, and on the other hand, we have low quality R&D project. On the x-axis is what we have is the number of the R&D projects which can be now funded, and on the y-axis, let us suppose as the price which can be given for each of the project that will be funded. The only difference between these two is that on one side, this side we have the high quality projects, and here you have the low quality projects as such. So this is the supply of the high quality projects which is available in the market. Inventor will come up with more and more projects if they will get more and more investment from the other outsiders. So here the idea is someone may have an idea to conduct the research project and someone else is now having the money and they would be buying that kind of a money. So that means there would be somebody who has that money would be willing to invest in that kind of a projects, but they would be ready to give lower, they will be able to fund more and more projects if and only if the price per project actually gets down. So that is why a demand curve in that sense is downward sloping, but this is a demand for higher quality research and development project. So what we find here is on graph A is that this is the demand for the high quality project, this is the supply. As a result, you will find that around 50,000 projects would be funded, maybe for this much amount for a per project. On side B, what you will find, this would be the demand for the medium quality project, and this was the supply for such project. As a result, you find that these many projects has been funded and for a certain amount that is now lower than the amount which we had in the high quality project. So now what will happen is that the information asymmetry that exists in the market. What was that? That the person who is funding the project, they may not know whether the project is of high quality and of a low quality. And because of that information asymmetry, what will happen, that you will find that the presence of the low quality projects in the market will drive down the price for the high quality, and as a result, the high quality research and development projects will be driven out of the market to a point that only low quality projects will be remaining in the market as such. So how will that happen? So this we have already done. So that means that the high quality project is this much, for low quality project this much amount, and these many projects are be funded in that sense. Then initially what will happen, the investor will think that odds are 50-50 that a project will be of a high quality. Right? Investors therefore will view all the projects as a medium quality. That means the demand for project perceived to be medium in that case will be this one now, R&D LM. R&D M. So this would be the one which you will be perceiving, because this is you will see that the actual demand that should be there for high quality, but the person who is going to spend the amount on that, they will perceive it as rather something which are of a medium quality. So this would be the demand for them, but supply being this. So as a result, what you will find that now the quality of the R&D projects which exist in the market that belong to high quality has now gone down from 50,000 to 20,000. As a result, what will happen now, more medium quality projects are available in the market as such, and as a result, the perception that the investor has with respect to the different project will now go down further. So it will shift more and more in this particular direction. As a result, you will find that medium quality project will sell. However, few higher quality and more low quality projects will now be sold. If that happens, as the consumer, or you will realize as the person who is funding, they begin to realize that the most projects are of a low quality, their perceived demand will further shift. So the new demand in that case will come down to once again to this particular level, right? And as a result, you will find that from low to medium as such. So what is happening is that because of the perception that the investor has with respect to the quality of the project, you will find that for the low quality, the demand is shifted up towards the medium, whereas for the high, it is shifted lower towards the medium. And the ultimate impact of that is that in a market, you will find that more medium quality projects are now being available. And that means if more medium quality projects are available, that means fewer high quality are available and more of a low quality are available as such. This process will go on until what will happen that you will realize that the shift continue to happen as to a point where only low quality projects will be sold or will be available, will be funded by the investor as such. At this point, the market price would be too low in order to bring forward people with the high quality project as such. So then what we'll realize that this is a typical lemon problem with the asymmetric information. Low quality R&D products are now driving out the high quality R&D projects out of the market. we look at the earlier works of by Schumpeter. There also he has pointed out that it is through the working of bank credit cycle, which will in fact at that point of a time was expected to support the innovative activities of the entrepreneur. The idea was the circular flow of production, which is now broken out by the creation of the bank credit. This will enable the innovative entrepreneur to outbid or draw away the necessary means of production from other businesses. This transformative change again in the meaning and the methods or the purpose of production would be rather introduced or done because of the availability of the bank credit. So he has highlighted the role of the credit in this case to support the innovation activities by the entrepreneur. Now, in case of, we have also talked about that, how the Schumpeter's perception has shifted from entrepreneurs to the large businesses in terms of supporting innovation. Clearly, over a period of a time, in his work in Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy, he has highlighted the role of large-scale enterprises to support innovation, which we have discussed in detail and pointed out the availability of the resources with the particular, companies or enterprises is something which is of much relevance when it comes to supporting or conducting the research and development activities. Next, now when we talk from the point of view of enterprises, particularly financing the enterprises, there are some microeconomic aspects which are of much importance from the point of view of individuals who are now going to spend money to support such activities. So what are those parameters? So those parameters are related to information that we have already talked about, incentive, that is how the companies will behave after getting the fund, right? Since we know that the R&D project is already uncertain, now suppose a project has been funded and it does not yield to a particular outcome, then how do we know that it was because of the uncertainty associated with that, or the company after getting the fund did not work the way it was expected? So what is the way to keep them incentivized, to keep them motivated to continue the work that they have been doing, and also exerting and exercising certain kind of a control over the overall functioning of the particular enterprise. So these are the concerns from the point of view of the individuals who would be investing. These were the parameters which will be used by them to evaluate also to different projects as such. Then, if you look at broadly what are the sources that are available to fund the research and development, I think it is very clear that it could be either done through debt. You can take loans, or you can take loan from the bank if it is possible, or you can take loan from maybe from your family, friends, etc. Those cases are also, available. Then, of course, equity is another way. Then, internal sources, if we are talking about a large company which is having profits to invest, and venture capitalist, it will be another source for the investment. So, we will talk about these sources in detail now. If you think from a point of view of a large firm, internal sources are going to be an important source to fund the new innovation activities. Why? Because these companies will have a substantial liquidity, and the cost of financing from external internal source, if it is lesser than the funds they will get from the external sources, clearly internal sources would be preferred. And it will also depend upon the role of companies' particular stage of development. Now, if we talk about internal sources, what we are talking about? We are talking about retained profits, and that has been retained maybe, and being invested over a period of a time, and company have an access to them as such. So that means only the companies which has a substantial liquidity will be able to tap into these resources. Moreover, while committing these resources for the research and development, the companies will also see whether the cost of them vis-a-vis that of getting the funds from the external sources. If it is lower, only then it will make sense for the company to invest in them. However, if you are thinking from a point of view of a company which is now just a startup, clearly such companies will not have access to those resources. So the stage of development of an individual company will also play a very important role, whether a particular company will be tap into these resources for the innovation activity or not. Further, if you look at venture capital. So venture capital, it is a form of private equity and a type of financing. What you find them, these are essentially for the startup companies or for the small businesses Who does that? Mainly well-off investors, investment banks, and any other financial institution having an access to resources will go ahead and support the startup companies or the small businesses, enterprises, which may have maybe a better or maybe a novel idea as such. Now, when we talk about venture capital financing, the information asymmetry is a major challenge which they face. As a result, what you find that many a times this venture capitalists will now engage in a way in order to deal with the information asymmetry. How will they deal with that? Maybe the commitment with respect to, so the idea here is that suppose a venture capitalist get to know a new idea. If you remember our idea of the ball, the particular bottle, right? Suppose you go and you pitch your idea to a venture capitalist. They do not know your capacity to undertake it to a level of a production. They do not know your commitment towards the particular factor. So as a result, they because of this information asymmetry, what they will do is they will try to stage the commitment of the capital. Right, and that means okay, we will give you at a certain level or next at a certain level, and keeping or preserving the option to abandon at any point wherever they will feel or they will think that this may not be working the way as they expected. So staging the commitment with the right to leave as per the choice can be a way to deal with the information asymmetry. Apart from that, using compensation system which is directly linked to the value creation, if you do this much then that much, etc., that is another option. And of course the active involvement, being engaged with the startup as such, being engaged with the entrepreneur in order to figure out that what is going on. So these are the different stages which has been identified with respect to the investment. So there can be something called as seed investment. So seed investment, here we are talking about a small amount of money to first to figure out whether the idea deserves any kind of a further consideration or not. Then for the startup companies, we will be having less than a year old or for a product development. They are at a prototype testing stage and the marketing. So they might be funding this kind of a startup. Then the early development. So we are looking at a stage where there is fund available only for the early development of the fund. Maybe it is just reaching the market, right? And market studies, they should also look good. That means there is a potential in this particular product. There is a potential to scale it up as such. And moreover, it is not expected that at the first stage the companies will be profitable as such. Then the second stage, here what you are looking at is an expansion case. So what do we mean by that? Essentially, a company in the second stage, effectively they have shipped enough product to enough customer. As a result, they are getting some feedback from the market, and it may not now qualitatively what the speed of the market penetration is rather is limited as if now, but they want to speed it up, and the company is probably still unprofitable at this particular stage, or maybe marginally they are making some profit, but it does need more capital, maybe for more warehousing, inventory, equipment purchase, and in order to scale the particular product or order to enterprise as such. So then you reach a third stage where now the companies might be profitable and the cash poor. So here we are looking from again sales growth is there, it is probably fast also, and there is a positive profit margin, but they are rather limited as such. So once again, you need certain more cash in order to fund your further expansion at this stage. However, you will find that at this stage, maybe some banks may also come forward and they might be willing to supply some credit if it can be secured through some fixed assets or maybe through receivables. So there is a potential that other people may also come into picture to fund. Then there could be a fourth stage where now you are looking at a very rapid growth towards the liquidity point as such, and again this is the fourth stage, and the companies are successful and stable, and so that the risk to an outside investor is now much more reduced. Now if the risk to an outside investor is much more reduced, that means there is a possibility that the company is now ready to go for a equity participation or for a initial public offer as such. Now, in between, if there is a possibility or there is a requirement that, in order to establish the maybe market in the market much better, there might be another more investment may come through, which may be a bridge or a mezzanine investment. Here again, the idea is that the company may have some idea which form of exit it is most likely to take, right? And they even know the timing, etc. And but they want to take it to a certain scale. Now, depending upon how the general market, the stock market is doing in that particular time, and as a result, the IPO window will be open only in few stages, or it could be unpredictable. Depending upon the overall environment, there is a possibility some more investment may come through. But over a period of a time, the idea would be to cash out or to exit. So, thinking from a point of view of a venture capitalist, in order to deal with the problem of the information asymmetry, you have seen the different stages that can be engaged in, involved in terms of the different levels of the funding. So, what we are talking about, the liquidity stage, a literal interpretation is effectively the cash out, and that means that the VC will hold share in the portfolio company for cash. In practice, it can come to mean that the point at which the VC investor now can gain the liquidity for a substantial portion of their holding, and liquidity may come in the form of IPO. If it does, then again it might be restricted to. So there would be certain constraints in terms of the investment, etc., coming from because of the individual countries' security exchange board, like SEBI in case of India, and in others in other cases. But here, the idea here is that maybe the venture capitalists will hold them, will rather sell also, and maybe make profit, and might be thinking of maybe moving out. So then, in this case, the element of the contract which we are looking at will be very important. The element of the contract can look at the sorting problem, agency problem, and operating cost problem. So what is the sorting problem? Here the idea is, you have various projects in front of you, like the one we had of a bottle. Somebody may have a drone in mind. Somebody may have a, which will go and paint the walls or something. Somebody may have another idea of an app. So you have different options available. As a venture capitalist, you have to sort out, right? So how to select the best venture capital organization and the best entrepreneurial venture. Then the agency problem, again, how to minimize the present value of the agency cost. Operating, how to minimize the present value of the operating cost, including taxes. So figuring out these aspects, the contract would be written from a point of view of the venture capitalist. Now, if you look at the certain cases, then a case of an American research and development fund was rather very popular. It was formed in 1946 by MIT president, and with the help of certain local leaders. And the idea there was a small group of venture capitalists. They made high risk investments into emerging companies, particularly that were based on the technologies which were coming from World War II. And the success of the investment ranged widely, but you find a company called DEC, Digital Equipment Company, which came in 1957. In fact, over a period of time, it grew in value to $355 million. And because the idea was that at that time institutional investors were very reluctant to invest, ARD was structured basically as a publicly traded closed-end fund and marketed mostly to the individuals as such. And involvement with venture in advising, planning, strategizing helped them in finding co-investors. So engagement was, as we have talked about earlier, with the view to reduce the information asymmetry as such. Now, in case of India, what we find that there was a Risk Capital Foundation which came in 1973, IFCI Ventures set up in 1975. Again, Indian government, they granted legal stature to the venture capital activities in 1988. And because what you find that IFCI Venture launched Technology Finance and Development Scheme. The idea was to provide financial assistance for setting up projects which were aiming at commercialization of indigenous technologies. You also find the first Indian venture capital firm, which was Technology Development and Information Company, being set up as a 50-50% joint venture between ICICI and UTI. So you have a history of the venture financing available in the country. a study has actually put them in a different phases. So if you look at the first phase, pre-1995 is basically a phase initial when they are coming into picture, so largely state sponsored. In 1988, the government introduced venture capital guidelines called the Controller of Capital, guideline. Again, these are very restrictive, and there were certain concerns about it. From 1995 to 2000, you have seen that the foreign companies were allowed to make investment in India. Indian entrepreneurs were success particularly was seen in Silicon Valley. That also attracted venture capitalists. In 1999, 80% of the VC investment was coming from overseas companies, and 70% of the deals from were essentially related to IT sector only. In phase 3, you find that the volume of deals rather picked up, and the venture capitalists, they were looking at Indian market, and the major attraction was for them was basically the healthcare and banking, financial services, insurance, etc. Now phase 4, again, this is a phase when you realize that there is a lot of momentum in terms of venture capitalist activities. Startups have come up. The first half is actually, in fact, characterized as very, very hectic activity, peaking in 2015, and 2018 marked a record year for VC investment, with India climbing the charts of VC investment in the world. So another study by Baines and company have highlighted that how from 2012 to 2017 is what we have witnessed is a maturing market. So here you have the growth rate being predicted here, and these are the number of the deals as such, and this is the average deal size you have here. Not the growth rate, the average deal size you have here. Then you have seen is basically a growing optimism during the period of 2018 and 19. Clearly there were challenges because of COVID-19, but very interestingly you find a very strong comeback, right? So the overall average deal amount amounting to $38.5 million is clearly a case of a very strong comeback. A certain recalibration did happen in 2022, but we have a very clearly engaging market and a rapidly evolving R&D startup environment that we are looking up. So if you see the first phase, we have a very rapidly evolving R&D startup environment, the rapid scale up of global hedge funds like Tiger Global, SoftBank, and in this particular phase, we have emerging sector, basically fintech, etc., picking up. And in this phase, again, you find that because of the COVID-19 situation, clearly, though there was a downfall again, but there was a major uptick. And then again, a recalibration as investors weigh the impact of the macro headwind, again, receding of the global crossovers, compression of the valuation multiples. So there are, because of the international situation, you will find that certain pressures being built up, but clearly we are on a up path. So if you now want to put what is the profile of the venture capital in India, is clearly certain funds which are coming from the central government, and you have this we have already looked at. Then there are state government also supported funds which are coming from, like Gujarat Finance, Venture Finance Company Limited. Public sector banks are also now investing, and clearly there are foreign banks or private sector companies which are engaged with the venture capital. So when you talk about the relationship between finance and innovation, what we do find, there are cross-industry variation in basic characteristics of innovation activity, which also then spills over to the relationship that they have with the financial institutions. So distribution of innovation activity, essentially you have to figure out that whether the most of the innovation activity is coming from entrant or from the incumbent. Incumbent might be a large company, so clearly the sources are going to be different. If it is coming from an entrant, which could be a startup, then clearly the sources of finance are going to be very different. Moreover, you have to also understand what is the stability or the turbulence of these populations' share of the innovation input and output. If there are much more divergences between the input and output, then clearly internal sources become more important as compared to the external one. And the sectoral differences, as I said earlier, has an impact on the allocation of the resources. Most importantly, one has to understand that if you want to conduct an empirical research with respect to the impact of finances being available for the innovation, the relationship cannot be studied as something which is unidirectional. That means availability of finance leading to the innovation. Because if a company is now successful in innovating, they are, able to come up with a new product, and as a result the sales are really peaking, you will find that such company will now have an access to the finance. Now whether they want to spend it for more innovation activities or how they will go about it is the next discussion point. But when we're talking about empirical setup, then clearly a bi-directional relationship can be much more relevant for the research. And then we also have to understand where are these entrants coming from. So we talked about that. Now suppose we look at an automobile sector and we say the major disruption is coming through the electric vehicle, and in case of an electric vehicle it is coming from not from the existing large companies but from many startups. If that is going on, then you also have to understand where are these startups or new entrants come up. Are they spin-offs from an academic institution, or they are spin-off of the existing companies? Are this a diversified company? Maybe already a large player is existing and then they are corporate venturing like we have seen. Are they competing directly? What are the innovation strategies, whether it is based on licensing or a joint venture? So those aspects need to be very well understood. These will once again have a very important implication on the finance availability for the conduct of the research and development. Moreover, you have to understand there are also temporal variation, right? So it is like, for example, automobile sector for a long time there was stagnation in terms of the technologies that are the key technology which was available. Now because of the electric vehicle a major disruption happens, then it will stabilize a bit. So as a result, because of this temporal variations, you will find that the innovation, the sources of innovation will also vary. As a result, the sources of finance for that will also vary. So while understanding this relationship between finance and innovation, one has to take into consideration the various other factors which are related to, first of all, what are the sources of the innovation, and at what are the different technological opportunities which are available in that particular industry at that point of a